the small town of Canaan, Indiana, discovered what looked like a body not far from the road. When they looked closer, they discovered that it was indeed a body, and a badly burnt one at that. Members of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department were called, and pretty soon, members of the Indiana State Police. One of the first troopers to arrive was a David Cam. Initially, investigators believed that the body was somehow related to a drug deal gone wrong. After all, rural, that's where I was trying to go with that, Indiana is not the type of place where thrill kills happen regularly. Now, I have to mention, I have lived in rural Indiana, and the town that I lived in had a gas station and a bank, and there was nothing to do. But that didn't mean that we went out killing each other for fun. Anyway, so therefore, drug addicts seemed at first like the most likely culprits. Still, investigators assembled. They were good cops, and they did not abandon all the avenues just to focus solely on a possible drug deal angle. They put out the word on the radio. A homicide investigation was underway. Around 10:55 a.m., Chief Deputy Randy Spry takes Foley's call. He drives out to the location, and when he reviews the scene, he radios to police headquarters, and he requests that Sheriff Richard Buck Shipley respond to the scene. It takes more than an hour for him to get there from Madison. What Buck Shipley sees horrifies him, and he makes the determination that the sheriff's office does not have the resources to handle this investigation. So he radios the Indiana State Police and requests assistance. Around 1 p.m., Detective Steve Henry from the Indiana State Police and Sergeant Curtis Wells, who is a forensic expert, arrive on the scene. Detective Henry video records the crime scene and uses a camera for still photographs. He also takes casings of various unknown tire tracks and footprints. Sergeant Wells begins the examination of the body. The torso from the waist up has been burned very badly, and although the remains appear to be a young female, at this point it's very difficult to tell. The body is primarily naked except for a pair of feminine-styled panties, which have been pulled to one side. This is going to get a little graphic, y'all, so I should have given that warning ahead of time. If you are offended by things like this, or it triggers you in some way, please click out of this video before I go any further. I really don't want to officers confirmed that Shanda Scherer was missing. Detective Howard Henry visits with Steve and Jackie and then obtained dental records for Shanda. The dental records of Shanda Scherer match the burned victim's teeth. Sheriff Shipley now had to go back and tell her parents. Of course, having a child who's missing is terrifying, but being notified that your child is dead or murdered is even more horrific. I can't even imagine how terrifying that must be. Upon sighting Detective Henry's face, Stephen and Jackie knew they were going to hear something terrible. And when told the dire news that their daughter was deceased, Jackie was hysterical. Both she and Stephen were inconsolable. Based upon Tony Lawrence's confession, the police arrested a clique of local teenagers. Now, there are a lot of names in this case, guys, so I will try to refer to them the same way every time. But I know that it's confusing without faces to put to the names. So here we go. Melinda Lovelace, Lori Tackett, Hope Rippey, and Tony Lawrence. Besides participating in the torture and murder of Shanda, all the girls involved shared certain commonalities. Most, if not all of them, came from troubled backgrounds. The chief ringleader, Melinda, had the worst background of all. She was born in a rural border town of New Albany, Indiana. Melinda was the daughter of Marjorie and Larry Lovelace. Her father was well known locally for being a Vietnam vet. My dad was a Vietnam vet, so, but this guy is not someone to be proud of. As I keep reading, you'll understand what I mean. According to Melinda, he was a sex pervert who delighted in not only wearing his wife and daughter's clothes, but also watching other men and women sleep with his wife. For his part, Larry was also far from monogamous with a G, yes. Besides his sexual peculiarities, Larry Lovelace was also a chronic malingerer and a serial abuser of power. In the 1960s, he was fired from his job as a probation officer after he and another officer assaulted a black inmate who Larry accused of sleeping with his wife. Many years later, he landed a job as a mailman. That did not last very long either. As for Marjorie Lovelace, this is Melinda's mom, her life with Larry was a living nightmare. At one point, he forced her to participate in a gangbang, which his daughters, including Melinda, watched. Because of this, and because of what Marjorie knew, which was that Larry liked to fondle his own children, Marjorie tried to commit suicide on multiple occasions. By 1990, after she had stabbed Larry for spying on Melinda and her friend, Larry moved to Florida. Apparently, the departure of her father devastated Melinda, which I understand, but don't understand. If he was assaulting you and creepily watching you, I would think you'd be glad to get rid of him, but anyway, like Melinda, Lori Tackett came from a tough home, headed by an ex-con patriarch. Her father was a deeply religious Pentecostal Christian who worked in a factory, but also liked to sexually assault his daughter during her adolescence. While Larry Lovelace's sexual appetite was the downfall of his household, the Tacketts were driven into dissolution by religious mania. At one point, after discovering that Lori had been wearing jeans to school. Her mother almost strangled her to death. Somebody just honked outside. I hope you can't hear that. Even after social workers became involved with the Tackett family, Lori continued to fight with her mother and father. These quarrels helped push Lori further down a path of self-harm, an activity that she continued to do even after dropping out of high school in 1991, 1 year prior to the crime that we are discussing. Hope Anna Rippey was born in Madison on June 9th, 1976. Her father was an engineer at a power plant. Her parents divorced February 1984, and she moved with her mother and siblings to Quincy, Michigan for 3 years. She claimed that living with her family in Michigan was somewhat turbulent. Her parents resumed their relationship in Madison in 1987. She was then reunited with her childhood friends, Lori and Tony Lawrence, whom she'd known since childhood. Tony Lawrence was born in Madison in February 1976. Her father was a Boilermaker, and she was close friends with Hope from childhood. She was abused by a relative at age 9 and then sexually assaulted by a teenage boy at age 14. Although the police were only able to issue an order for the boy to keep away from Tony, she went to counseling after the incident, but then didn't follow through with it. She became very promiscuous, started to self-harm, and attempted suicide in the 8th grade. While the parents of both Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence thought that Lori was a bad influence on their daughters, Hope and Tony were far from angels. Hope later accused her parents of sexual molestation, while Lori's mother at one point barged into the Rippey home because she believed that Hope's obsession with a Ouija board had unleashed some sort of evil presence in the area. Taken together, the girls, even Shanda, who came from a broken home in Kentucky, present a depressing portrait of rural poverty in the Midwest. All learned about sex, especially abusive sex, too early, and they all suffered because of it. Sex, along with revenge, was the reason why Shanda was murdered. It all began because of a disastrous relationship between Melinda Loveless and another girl named Amanda Heverin. When Melinda's father left, she became even more irrational than before, with fights and arguments being very commonplace both inside and outside of school. In particular, Melinda's religious mother did not at first accept her homosexuality, thus causing even more friction within the household. But eventually, they reconciled, but by that point, Amanda and Melinda were no longer a couple. It seemed like Amanda had met a friend and found another shoulder to lean on. Shanda Scherer. They actually met in detention. Even though Melinda began seeing someone else, another girl, by this point, she never forgave Shanda for seeing Amanda. Now, they didn't know each other. She was just mad at her because she was the other girl, which I never understand that, but anyway. Shanda and Amanda attended a dance together in early October of 1991, where Melinda Loveless angrily confronted them. In late October, Amanda and Shanda also attended a festival together. Melinda begins to tell her friends that she wants to kill Shanda and threatens Shanda in public. All told, over the course of the next 6 months, Melinda made many threats, both in school and out of school, against Shanda Scherer. In November of 1990, Shanda Scherer's parents, Steve and Jacqueline, are concerned about Shanda's relationship with Amanda and the threatening behavior of Melinda Loveless. In late November, I think I meant 1991. Yeah, I must have typed that incorrectly. Yes, 1991, sorry. I'm trying to keep, I have like a timeline typed so I can make sure I give you the right dates. In late November of 1991, they arranged for Shanda to be enrolled in Catholic school, but to get her away from Amanda because they were concerned that number one, their 12-year-old daughter is having a homosexual relationship with a girl, which I think is terrible that it was 1992, so the world has changed drastically since then, but still. Anyway, this school switching was still not enough for Melinda. Shanda and Amanda continued their friendship in secret, and the harassment by Melinda also continued unabated. She threatened her via the phone or by having friends pass Shanda threatening notes. Around Christmas, Shanda starts to fear Melinda, and it messes with her relationship with Amanda. This causes her to break up with her. The threats, sort of continued, and things really sort of escalated on the night of January 10th. Remember, Hope Rippey, Tony Lawrence, and Lori Tackett have known each other since childhood. Tony, at this point, had never met Melinda. This night would be her first encounter with her. Hope met Melinda only once, maybe twice before, but somehow they both got invited to go to a concert with Lori and Melinda. Lori drives the three of them from Madison, Indiana to New Albany, Indiana to meet up with Melinda. They had all lied to their parents using the excuse that they were spending the night at a friend's house, which I think every teenager does. When they arrived, Melinda tells all of them their plan, her plan, which Lori Tackett already knew. That she wants to scare a girl named Shanda Scherer. Melinda shows them a large kitchen knife, which she intends to use to scare Shanda. She tells the girls, Shanda's a copycat, and I want to scare her for stealing my girlfriend. Lori Tackett eggs her on by saying that she's tired of hearing Melinda just talk about hurting Shanda, and that if she really wants to hurt her, she should go ahead and really do it. Peer pressure is a killer, guys, I'm telling you, literally. So, the four girls devise a plan to lure Shanda out of her home and into their clutches. Melinda tells the girls that Shanda's parents have forbidden Shanda from seeing Amanda anymore, and they decide to use Amanda Everin as a ploy to lure Shanda out of her house. And it works. So, they drive to Melinda's house. They pick her up. Melinda has already gotten Shanda's address. This girl, I don't know, guys. How did she? The extent of where they went with this is just crazy to me. So, Tony Lawrence, age 15, Hope Rippey, age 15, Lori Tackett, age 17, are with the mastermind of this plan, Melinda Loveless. They have to go to Shanda's home in Jefferson, Indiana. They get lost. They have to stop several times to ask for direction. It's 1992. They can't exactly call do instead of just coming here? Hope responds, Amanda knew that she couldn't come to your house. But Shanda declines their offer, knowing that her parents were still awake. However, she tells them to come back after midnight and that she would sneak out to meet them. So the girls go back to the car. Melinda was angry at first, but Hope and Tony assure her that they will return for Shanda later. The four girls cross the river into Louisville and attend a punk rock show by the band Sunspring. But only Melinda and Lori enjoyed the music. Tony and Hope decided that they were going to have sex with two boys in Lori's car while the band plays. When it came time to return to Jeffersonville, Melinda began musing to the other girls about how she couldn't decide if she wanted to kill or sleep with Shanda before the night was over. Around 12:30, Melinda hides herself under a blanket in the back seat, while Hope and Lori go to the door. This time around, Tony decided she didn't want to go. Hope told Shanda that Amanda was still at the witch's castle, and at first, Shanda was again reluctant to go with them. She doesn't know these girls, but she does agree to go. She changes her clothes and follows them out to the car. During the drive to the witch's castle, Hope begins antagonizing Melinda, who is still hiding in the backseat, remember, by asking Shanda details of her relationship with Amanda. Hope asks Shanda, "Tell me about your relationship." Shanda says, "We'd been going out for a while. I really cared for her." Shanda asks Hope, "What's wrong with Amanda? Why does she have to see me so badly?" At this point, Melinda gets irritated, and she throws off her blanket and the trash piled over her and yells, "Surprise!" Not the kind of surprise I want. She grabs Shanda by the hair, pulls back her head, and puts the knife to her throat. All of the girls laugh at Shanda's pleas for Melinda to please not hurt me. Melinda holds the knife tightly to Shanda's throat the entire ride, repeatedly calling her, I don't like to cuss on my channel, many profanity names as she threatens her. Then she begins to tell Shanda about the legend surrounding the witch's castle. It was a place where 9 witches had lived before being burned alive by local townspeople. It was a place of death, Melinda told Shanda. Upon their arrival at the witch's castle, Melinda and Lori pull the uncontrollably crying Shanda inside the ruins. They've come prepared with rope, and Melinda binds Shanda's hands and arms tightly. Now remember, they knew they were going to do this, so they came prepared, but Melinda and Lori continue talking about the witch legend, even telling Shanda about a dungeon full of human remains. Melinda threatens to cut off all of Shanda's hair, and Hope joins in on the fun. She taunts Shanda with a knife. Lori Tackett found a t-shirt in the car and sets it on fire. I read that it had a smiley face on it, but she points to the fire and tells the extremely frightened Shanda, "This is what you're going to look like before the night is over." Melinda steals Shanda's jewelry, to include rings and a Mickey Mouse watch, and gives them to the other girls, which they put on. Worried that the fire that Lori had started might draw unwanted attention, they put Shanda back in the car and go to another location. Lori suggests which she then handed over to Hope, who took her own off and replaced it with Shanda's. It had polka dots on it. Again, the girls got lost and had to ask for directions at another gas station. Again, they hid Shanda underneath the same blanket. During this time, I read, and I don't know if she used a payphone or what, because again, it was 1992, that Tony called a friend, a boy, in Louisville in order to calm her nerves, but she mentioned nothing about Shanda and did not ask for any help. A few miles past Lori's house, the girls pull into an old logging road and stop. They all four get out of the vehicle, but Tony and Hope are cold, so they get back inside. Melinda and Lori grab Shanda and pull her from the back seat. Melinda removes the rope from Shanda's hands and arms, and at knife point orders her to undress in the bitter winter cold. It is January, you know. Shanda, obviously frightened and crying, undresses as Hope and Tony watch from inside the car. Melinda steals Shanda's clothes and throws them in the car, saying that she wants to keep them as souvenirs. Lori seizes Shanda's hands and holds them behind her back so that Melinda can beat her. As she is being beaten, Shanda begs her tormentors to let her go. She swears to Melinda that she'll stay away from Amanda, and Melinda, of course, tells her to shut up. She lives up to her surname of Loveless and punches Shanda hard in the stomach, pulls her by her hair, and repeatedly slams Shanda's head into her knee, causing Shanda's mouth to bleed from cuts on her lips. Melinda and Lori torture the sobbing girl. They beat her mercilessly with their fists and knees. After drawing blood from Shanda's face, Melinda tried to slit the 12-year-old's throat, but the knife that she had proved to be too dull. So they decided to stab her instead, which they accomplish once Hope comes out of the car to help pin Shanda down. At this point, Lori Taggett decides that they need to strangle Shanda with some rope. The bloody and moaning Shanda continues to beg them not to kill her. Melinda Loveless laughs in Shanda's face as she sits on her legs, and Lori straddles her chest. Lori wraps the rope around Shanda's neck and pulls it tight. Shanda passes out from their attempts to strangle her, and, believing that she's dead, they dump her body in the car's trunk. They decide that they'll go to Lori's home in order to clean up and to get a drink of soda. When they get there, Lori pulls out her ruling stones to read their futures, so it turned into a slumber party. Lori tells the others that our futures look good, but then her dog begins barking outside. The teenagers go to the window and listen. Shanda is still alive, and her screams draw the girls back outside. Lori runs to the kitchen, grabs a paring knife, and runs outside to the car. She hastily opens the trunk and starts stabbing Shanda again and again, multiple times. When Shanda becomes quiet, she closes the trunk. Returning to her room, she's covered in blood. After she cleans herself up, she tells the others, "We need to go for a ride." At this point, Tony and Hope claim that they're tired, so Lori and Melinda drive off by themselves. This was about 2 a.m. So they go country cruising, driving to the nearby town of Cannon. As they drive, they discuss what to do next. And I really couldn't find out what Tony and Hope did at this point. I don't know if they went to sleep she tries to speak, and the only word she was able to mutter is "Mommy." I can't imagine how her mom felt about that. Lori picks up a tire iron from the trunk and strikes Shanda in the head. She closes the trunk, and the two villains drive off again, cruising around back roads of the area. Lori and Melinda hear gurgling noises from inside the trunk, and they stop again. This time, only Lori gets out of the car and opens the trunk. Shanda, lying on her side, is emitting gasping and gurgling noises from her chest wounds. Lori once again uses the tire iron to beat her upon her head several times. One blow is so severe that she breaks a piece of Shanda's skull off. Lori shuts the trunk and gets back inside the car. She laughs and says that she looks like she was painted red. Lori waves the bloody tire iron under Melinda's nose and tells her how she beat Shanda's head with it. The sun is starting to rise, and the two teens drive back to Lori's home. Melinda and Lori return to Lori's house to clean up again, and Hope asks about Shanda. Lori laughingly describes the torture, and the conversation wakes up her mother, who yells at her daughter for being out late and bringing home friends, so Lori agrees to take them home. After leaving the house, Lori drives a short way to a burn pile near her house. They plan to commit the deed of disposing of Shanda there, but they find the burn pile frost-covered, and they will also need some gasoline to start a fire. Lori decides to show off their handiwork and opens the trunk. Tony Lawrence refuses to look. She's told to start the car and rev the engine if Shanda begins to scream. Hope sprays Shanda with Windex and taunts, "You're not looking so hot now, are you?" The girls drive to a gas station near Madison Consolidated High School. They pump some gasoline into the car and buy a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi. Lori pours out the Pepsi and refills the bottle with gasoline. They drive north of Madison past Jefferson Proving Ground to Lemon Road off U.S. Route 421, a place known to Hope. Tony remains in the car while Lori and Hope grab Shanda, who is still alive, clothed only in her underwear. They wrap her in a blanket and carry her to a field by the Gravel County Road. Lori made Hope pour gasoline on Shanda, and then they set her on fire. Melinda was not convinced that Shanda was dead, so they left and came back a few minutes later to pour the rest of the gasoline on her. Around 9:30 a.m., the girls stop to eat breakfast at McDonald's. Horrified that the other girls were comparing Shanda's burnt body to the sausages they were eating, Tony calls a friend and tells them about what just happened. Tony wasn't the only one talking about murder to other people either. Lori Tackett called Amanda Heverin and told her all about the crime. Amanda did not believe it until she was shown Shanda's bloody handprints in the car's trunk, along with her socks. Seeing Amanda's horrified reaction, Melinda Lovelace broke down, kissed her, and made her promise not to talk about the crime to anyone else. And Amanda agreed. Number one, I guess she agreed for her own safety, but why would you agree to that? And number two, why would you let her kiss you? You guys are not together anymore. Anyway, Shanda's father, Stephen, noticed that Shanda was nowhere to be found early January 11th. After phoning neighbors and friends all morning, he called his former wife. missing person report with the Clark County Sheriff. Toni Lawrence would be the first one to confess to her parents, with Hope Rippey being the second. Toni's parents took Toni to the police, while Hope's parents got their daughter a lawyer. Although their testimony denoted the horrific details of Shanda's murder, neither should be given credit for it. Neither Hope nor Toni had ever known or met Shanda Scherer prior, and yet they helped commit the heinous crimes against her. Neither one took advantage of several opportunities to notify an adult or authorities to stop these crimes that were committed against Shanda. I mean, they were left alone in Lori's house for hours. I don't understand. If they're so hysterical, then at 8:20 p.m., Toni and Hope go to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office with their parents. They both gave very rambling statements, identifying the victim as Shanda, naming 2 other girls involved as best as they could, and describing the main events of the previous night. On January 12th at 2 a.m., Sheriff Shipley and Detective Henry are about to serve arrest warrants on Lori Tackett and Melinda Loveless. They find Lori's vehicle parked at Melinda's mother's house. The officers decide to serve the warrants on both girls at the same time. Melinda's mother answers the door, and the officers explain that they are there to serve arrest warrants and ask where Melinda and Lori are. She informs them they're upstairs, so the officers proceed upstairs and into Melinda's bedroom, where they find both girls asleep. How could you sleep after this? Detective Henry shouts, telling the teens to get up. When they are awake, they are told they're being arrested on charges of murder. Melinda and Lori are led past Melinda's mother in handcuffs. They are transported, booked, and jailed at the police station. On Sunday morning, they are being interviewed at police headquarters prior to being transported to court. Dr. George Nichols is conducting an autopsy. The autopsy is, of course, on Shanda Scherer. Again, I will give you a graphic warning. I was horrified when I read the amount of injuries that this 12-year-old girl suffered. I'm going to read them to you now, but if you don't like it, maybe you should skip this part. Obviously, she had ligature marks on both wrists. She had lacerations on her head, neck, and legs. The upper part of her body is covered in 3rd and 4th degree burns. Her tongue protrudes from her clenched teeth. She has lacerations to her anus and rectum, which indicate a blunt object being inserted at least 3.5 inches. The extent of the bleeding indicates that she was alive at the time of that assault. They found soot in her upper airway, which indicated that she had been alive when she was doused with an accelerant and set on fire. Her fingers were in such a distorted condition that the digits had to be removed in order to take fingerprints. They also had to remove her jaw so that her family dentist could make a positive ID. The brutal murder of Shanda Scherer hit national headlines. Local and national media were clamoring for information. As a result, news articles, both in print, on the radio, and television, several other teens come forward to the authorities with information they felt was relevant. Melinda and Lori confessed to at least 3 people. 2 of them provide statements to Sheriff Shipley and Detective Henry. The investigators review witness statements, evidence recovered, and compare them with the statements made by Toni, Lori, and Melinda. All 3 girls attempted to play down their part in Shanda's murder, but yet much of their statements matched. that they have Shanda Sherr's murderers. That's a rough one. And are uncovering the events related to Shanda Sherr's last hours and moments of life. Prosecutor Townsend levies charges against Lori Tackett and Melinda Loveless of murder, arson, battery with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery, criminal confinement, and intimidation, which I didn't know was actually a criminal charge. Judge Ted Todd waives both teens from the juvenile system into the adult system. Later that afternoon, Melinda and Lori are again brought before the judge and charged with 7 additional crimes to include child molestation and criminal deviant conduct. On April 9th, 1992, Prosecutor Townsend files additional counts against both Loveless and Tackett. Felony murder. On April 22nd of 1992, Prosecutor Townsend extends a plea deal to Toni Lawrence, who accepts. Toni has pled guilty to a charge of criminal confinement. She will testify against Hope Rippey, Melinda Loveless, and Lori Tackett. In exchange, she will face 6 to 20 years in prison. Sentencing at the judge's discretion. Prosecutor Townsend will drop all other charges against Toni Lawrence. Melinda Loveless, Hope Rippey, and Lori Tackett are all offered sentencing pleas, which they repeatedly turn down. July 13th, 1992, Prosecutor Townsend files for the death penalty against Tackett and Loveless. He also lodges another charge against them both, conspiracy to commit murder, which they did do. Prosecutor Townsend did not file for the death penalty against Hope Rippey because of her age. On August 17th, 1992, Toni Lawrence is found by jailers comatose and slumped over inside of her cell. She was transported to Scott Memorial Hospital, and tests showed that she had taken an overdose of lorazepam, which is an antidepressant. An investigation determined that she had been hoarding the daily dose of the drug so she could make a suicide attempt. She was kept in intensive care for 11 days, and then when she regained consciousness, she was transferred to LifeSpring Mental Health Facility for evaluation, and she stayed there until October of 1992. In September of 1992, Lori and Melinda accept plea deals. In exchange for pleading guilty to criminal confinement, torture, arson, and the murder of Shanda Sherr, the state will drop all other charges and withdraw the death penalty. Their ultimate sentences will run concurrently, and the agreement is contingent upon their cooperation with the state. In November of 1992, Lori and Melinda each admit their roles and actions regarding the death of Shanda Sherr. Lori Tackett, age 17, was sentenced to 60 years in the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis, Indiana. Her release date was set for 2052. She is eligible for release with good behavior in 2022. Melinda Loveless, age 16, is sentenced to 60 years in the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis. Release date set for 2052. Eligible for release with good behavior in 2022. Toni Lawrence, age 15, is sentenced to 20 years in the Indiana Women's Prison, Pendleton. Release date set for 2012. She is eligible to be released on good behavior in 2002. She was actually released from prison on December 14th of 2000. Judge Todd sets a trial date of March 1st, 1993 for Hope Rippey, who continues to maintain her innocence. She finally accepts a plea deal with the state, and they request a change of venue for her sentencing hearing. On June 1st, 1993, Judge Jeannie Jordan presided. Hope Rippey made a brief statement to the court claiming that her only action against Shanda was pouring the gasoline on her body. Which is true, but not true. Like, she's the one that lured her to the car. She's the one that held her down while other people stabbed her. So the defense, Dr. Michael Sheehan, a psychologist, said, Hope Rippey is immature and acted solely under the domination of Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett. The prosecution had witnesses who testified in the sentencing of Lori and Melinda also testify in Hope's hearing. Under their plea agreements, Lori, Melinda, and Tony also testify. From their testimony, it is clear that Hope was more active in the crimes against Shanda than she wishes to admit to. Jackie, Shanda's mother, testifies, and she presents a video of Shanda to the court. Hope has no intention of watching it, but she holds her head down, and the judge orders her to view it. Jackie says, "Imagine how you'd feel if someone did to your niece what you did to my daughter. You cannot know the pain we felt. There is no greater pain than losing your child." Judge Jordan said, "Hope Rippey had choices. There were avenues of escape, ways to help herself, ways to help Shanda. She poured gasoline so no one would get caught, even though she knew it would kill her. Her lack of mercy, of tender courage, is a horrifying lesson to us all." Hope Rippey, age 15, is sentenced to 60 years. 10 years suspended for mitigating circumstances and 10 years of probation upon release. Her release date is set for 2042. She was eligible for early release with good behavior in 2022. She was released in 2006 for good behavior. Indiana has a policy of reducing sentences by day for every day that you serve with good behavior. In December of 2000, Tony was released on parole. She served 9 years of a 20-year sentence. Upon her release, she made a brief statement. "I didn't stop it. I couldn't stop it. I don't care what anyone says. If I had tried anything different, I would have been dead, lying there with her, and they would never know." Tony returned to Madison, Indiana to reside with her parents. In 2004, Hope requested a reduction in her sentence. It was denied. Lori will later claim that in 2004 she tried to commit suicide. In 2006, Hope was freed on parole. She served 14 years of a 50-year sentence. She's now a registered sex offender or violent offender, both. As such, she's photographed every year. I don't know why that she was registered as that, but not Tony. And I didn't find anything on the other girls. No one ever admitted to assaulting her with they assume it was the tire iron sexually. No one admitted to it. No one would fess up to it, so they're not exactly sure who did it, but it just horrifies me. And Jackie says of Hope's early release, "She tortured my daughter for more than 10 hours. I do not accept this. She murdered my daughter, and I am incensed by her release. She lured Shanda out of the house, held her down while she was stabbed and strangled, sprayed window cleaner into her wounds, and poured gasoline on her so the group could set her afire." Hope's early release was made possible because St. Joseph County prosecutor failed to do his job. They could have prevented her sentence reduction if they had chosen to oppose the sentence modification motion back in 2004. "She poured gasoline on my 12-year-old child and burned her alive. But she's an asset to society and has strong convictions and is ethical. I don't get it. I just don't get it." As I researched this case, I kept thinking, what would make people do this? What if I met a girl and Shanda at all. I didn't go into that evening knowing anything was going to happen or wanting anything to happen. I didn't. Peer pressure, that's all it was. It spiraled out of control way too fast, and it's something that never should have happened. Furthermore, in an interview on Dr. Phil, the convicted killer explained why she thinks people kill. My opinion is that they kill to feel superior or high on the victim's fear, and that they're thirsty for the spill of blood. Dr. Phil asked Lori's mother and sister if they agreed with that statement, and they said yes. Her mom said that her daughter believed that it was her destiny that she would murder someone in cold blood and spend the rest of her life in prison. Who believes that's their destiny? Jeffrey Dahmer, maybe. Her prediction was partly true. While Lori did have a hand in killing Shanda, she was released in January of 2018. Lori's motives aside, what drove 16-year-old Melinda Loveless to mastermind such a brutal murder? Shanda Scherer's mother, Jackie, said in a 2012 interview, "I had many times said if you want to see as close to a person who has absolutely nothing inside of them, look into Melinda Loveless's eyes because there's nothing there." Now, she did have a difficult childhood. Remember, her father was a Vietnam veteran and sexually abused her and her siblings and her mother. That being said, that doesn't make you murder people. In 2005, Shanda's father died of cancer. Her mother said that he was so destroyed by his daughter's murder that he did everything he could to kill himself, besides put a gun to his head. He drank himself to death. He definitely died from a broken heart. I can't even imagine trying to move forward with life when something like that happens to your child. Because obviously you don't get over it, but you learn to move forward. I don't really have any theories on this case as to why they did this. I can't answer that. I think that peer pressure made a lot of decisions for those girls that night, and I am incredibly sorry for 12-year-old Shanda Scherer, who should have had many, many, many more years to enjoy life. It kind of makes me sad that some of these girls are out of prison. Do I think people can change? Yes. Do I think that 9 years or 14 years was enough of a sentence? No. No, I don't. But what can you do? And I'm no judge or jury. So, I hope you enjoyed this case. Thanks for sticking with me. It's a long